is set to get underway at any minute. When that happens, we will take you there live. Here's what we know tonight. 18 people were injured, 3 of whom were critically injured. This is Delta Flight 4819. It was inbound from Minneapolis-St. Paul, carrying 76 passengers and 4 crew members when something, as you see here, went terribly wrong while landing. It caused the right wing of this jet to be sheared off. The landing tail is gone. You see that there was some type of fire involved right there. Something went terribly wrong, and the entire plane inverted at the runway. This, by the way, Toronto's Pearson Airport, the busiest airport in Canada. So you see the snow, you see the wind. Was it weather related? Was there a mechanical issue with the aircraft? Or did both factor into this crash? The investigation tonight, Lonnie, is really just beginning.
That's right. And as you can imagine, it was a chaotic situation. Let's take a listen to this video that was captured by a passenger who was on the flight.
We're in Toronto. We just landed. Our plane crashed. It's upside down. Fire department's on site. Upside down. Everybody, most people appear to be okay. We're all getting off. Some smoke going on.
All right, I want to bring in BJ Nouns now. He is a commercial pilot with roughly 30 years worth of flying experience. You also flew F-18s with the Marines. Thank you for your service, sir. I think you give us great context when it comes to these types of stories. Also, Sherry Walker is joining us. She also is a pilot with roughly 30 years worth of experience. But BJ, I want to start with you. Take me into the cockpit. Okay, because you just heard the guy who got off the plane, and you can hear in his voice, he's shaken, he's stunned, right? I mean, he just walked out of an airplane that ended up upside down. When you are flying in, and we know that the wind speeds at the time were roughly 20 to 30 miles per hour, with wind gusts up to 40. Again, take me into that cockpit. How does that impact you landing at the airport?
First of all, there are a lot of unknowns, so I can't take you in that exact cockpit. But I can tell you that the weather and the winds, could be a factor. It could be a mechanical issue. But there are a lot of things, especially on short final when we're talking about those wind gusts. And a plane that size, really a plane any size, but that size, the winds can start to upset. And if you make one miscue with the controls. Also the airspeed that you're flying. You've got to add airspeed if you're experiencing wind gusts. That maintains the energy on the airplane in case you're flying into a headwind. Now the wind speed drops for a short amount of time that the airplane doesn't just settle.
So help me understand. So when you're on your final approach, you're dialing back on the speed of the aircraft, right? As you come into land, or is that wrong?
So when you're in the flare, you're 30 to 20 feet above the runway surface. You've got the landing made. You start to bring the power back now because you're now transitioning the flare. You're slowing the airplane, preparing to slow the airplane down. If you take the power off too soon, now you end up with a settle. You end up with a rapid rate of descent when you don't want. And then if you start to add power, it's really too late at that point. You're going to experience a hard landing.
Man, hey, I want to talk to Sherry real quick because Sherry Walker, walk me through, Sherry. You are a pilot as well. You've got the same amount of experience as BJ here. But, when you're in flight school, did they take you through a scenario in which you've got to figure out how to get 76 passengers off of a plane while it's upside down? I mean, I spent the afternoon talking about this on air, and I'm trying to figure it out how it works. You're buckled in with your safety belt, but you're upside down with the weight of your body on that belt, and everyone's out in there trying to figure this thing out. Walk me through the training and how prepared is the crew to tackle something that they've never experienced before?
Well, our flight attendants are some of the best trained in the world. There's a couple facts that we know right now or make clear. Number one, this is not a mainline aircraft. We keep saying Delta. It is a Delta color, but it was operated by Endeavour. Number two, this had Canadian landing, Canadian air traffic control, nothing that the other media is trying to pin on the cutbacks with DOGE and the investigations in the FAA have anything to do with this. Okay, aviation remains safe. However, there's a little bit other information that's come to my knowledge. It's grapevine, so you can say you heard it here first, and we'll check on the facts as we get a little further down. But it is my understanding that the first officer was operating the aircraft, that she had recently received her airline transport pilot rating and was likely, in fact, on a what we call initial operating experience leg where they were doing training. Not a situation as the seasoned captain that I would ever let a first officer land. My criteria are a little different, and that is across the industry. So just a few pieces there to think about. As far as trying to evacuate an airplane upside down, other than my Navy training, no, we don't really prepare for that, although our flight attendants are well-versed in, as I say, in all evacuations.
And you're right. We see thousands of planes take off and land safely every single day. But that's new information to us. We haven't heard any of those reports of those pilot issues, but we'll look into those for sure. This is brand new video into our newsroom tonight, and you can see this is a closer ground view of people deplaning there. You know, normally that emergency slide would come out, right, BJ, and they would be walking out or sliding down. But in this case, can we re-cue that video? Because what I want to show BJ what it was like inside. Look, this is you can see. These are chair seats, right? You see bags and purses, and we've got another one. I want to show you this because think of the orientation. Next slide, where they're actually walking out. If we can get it, these are the call buttons, the lights, the air vents. Everything is right there. That's normally right up here, right? So everything is like disoriented and put me in this situation when you're trying to help people and you yourself, you're coming off the biggest high of like, OMG, what just happened?
Yeah, for sure. I will say first things first, fasten your seatbelts. So when they tell you to fasten your seatbelts, fasten your seatbelt, and that is why. Second thing, on this particular airplane, there are no evacuation slides. So had it been your airplane upside down, now you got an evacuation slide that's now blocking your exit or partially blocking your exit. So in some ways, thank goodness that this airplane didn't have evacuation slides. Like the point made earlier, the flight attendant, if you look at the flight attendant during the video, she's calm, she's helping. I mean, that goes to a lot of training. No one trains for being an upside down in an airplane, on a runway. But, fantastic job. The other thing I don't see here is I don't see a lot of passengers grabbing their bags and exiting the airplane with their bags. Get off the airplane. On this video, you can see the wetness right here. Yeah. Whether or not that's the stuff that the firefighters are spraying, or potentially fuel.
Real quick, you see the way the wind is blowing? Can you just rewind that just a tad bit, Stephen, for me? You see the way the wind is blowing this snow? This here is an indication to me that this is the north-south, right? Isn't that the way? Like if the plane was coming in, and you see the wind is coming this way, that to me makes me think, man, this wind probably played some type of role. Could I be wrong?
Could have been, and again, it's really early investigation.
BJ, stay with us. We got the news conference live in Toronto. Let's listen in.
Sure.
We're also joined here today by Toronto Pearson Fire, Mississauga Fire, Peel Regional Paramedic Services, and Peel Police. Deborah will not be taking questions today, but we'd like to welcome her up at this time.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Deborah Flint, President Pearson, CEO of Toronto Pearson. I've just come over from our Emergency Operations Center, and I'm here to give you a statement on what events transpired here today at Toronto Pearson. First and foremost, there was no loss of life. And this is in due part to our heroic and trained professionals, our first responders at the airport. So the facts of the matter around this event that happened at approximately 2:30 p.m. is Delta Airlines Flight 4819 from Minneapolis to Toronto, operated by subsidiary Endeavour Air, was involved in a single aircraft accident upon landing at Toronto Pearson. The plane was carrying 4 crew and 76 passengers, among them 22 Canadians. The other passengers were multinational. Airport emergency workers mounted a textbook response, reaching the site within minutes and quickly evacuating the passengers. We stood up our Emergency Operations Center with Delta Airlines and representatives from fire, police, paramedics, security, and our federal agency partners. Again, there were no fatalities. 17 injured passengers were quickly taken to local area hospitals. At this time, we do not know of any of those passengers having critical injuries. We immediately halted further arrivals and departures on our remaining 3 runways. Those runways were reopened at approximately 5 p.m. The other runways are remaining to serve the investigation, which will be carrying forward for the rest of tonight and into the next several days. These 2 runways will remain closed while the investigation takes place. Again, we are very grateful that there was no loss of life and relatively minor injuries. We are very focused on the care and the concern and the passengers and the crew, some of whom have already been reunified with their friends and their families. Others we have in a comfortable place right here at the airport in an environment where they're getting a lot of care and support from my staff. Delta Airlines is also continuing to provide customer care and information for passengers. In closing, no airport CEO wants to have these type of press conferences, but this is exactly what our emergency, our operations, and our federal, our first responder partners are all practiced and trained for. And again, this outcome is in due part to their heroic work, and I thank them profusely. Our thoughts and prayers are with all. We will be providing more information as it becomes available. We do expect that there will be some operational impact and some delays at the airport over the next few days while the 2 runways remain closed for the investigation. And we will be sharing information periodically. For those traveling, continue to look at our website and be in touch with your respective carrier as well. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Deborah. We're going to continue posting Toronto Pearson updates, operational updates on our X account, so be sure to follow us there. Thank you all for joining us.
All right, so that was a very quick update. That was Deborah Flint, CEO of Toronto Pearson International Airport. The biggest update that she gave us is there are no more critically injured people from the flight. So that's great news, right? Of the 17 people, she updated the number 17 injured, none of them critically. So they all received non-life-threatening injuries, which is great news, especially, again, when you see what happened. BJ is still with us. BJ, I want to focus our attention on the runway where it happened. You said this is runway number...
I think this is runway 23.
23.
This one here.
Yep. So the flight was coming in, circled back around during approach, and came back down this way. Now, one thing that I noticed on the video is, let's take that video if we can, Stephen. This is what I want. This is what I want to highlight. So you see the wings of the plane carry a lot of the fuel, right? And so that's where we saw some of the charring, because there were initial reports that it's upside down and burning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I heard that. I think that was a helicopter that was in the pattern had made that call to air traffic control, saying they could see the airplane and it was on the ground upside down and burning.
So these lines right here are what? This is something on the runway that's a visual cue or marker for you, right?
So yeah, it's hard. So it looks like these are threshold markings for the runway, delineating where the threshold is, close to the approach or the departure end of a runway.
Okay.
So it's not. What I don't see is one thick single line, which would be center line, but those could be actually on the center line for the runway or off to one side.
So my question to you, does that mean that the runway is going this direction, do you think?
Yes, this would indicate the direction of the
Gotcha.
runway here.
So knowing that, when you see, let's put this in motion, when you see the snow and everything that's blowing around, let's see. When I get too close, I really can't see it. See, you see the wind is blowing it this way, right? So does that, in your mind? And again, I know the investigation continues, right? But I'm just trying to get a sense if this was a crosswind or if this was more of a headwind that the pilot was dealing with.
Yeah. So and again, it's kind of hard to tell in from the video exactly, but there's certainly, it's at an angle, so there's certainly a component of it that's headwind and some crosswind, just based on the angle that it's coming from. There would have had to have been some sort of crosswind, correction for the pilot coming into to land there.
Yeah.
And then, based on the magnitude of the crosswind and then the angle off, it will change what the apparent cross is. So, for example, it's 40 knots, but it's straight off the nose. There is no crosswind component, but the more that you go there's more of that 40 knots that accounts to being a crosswind, if that makes sense.
No, it does, for sure. Sherry, I know you're with us. Thank you for listening to that press conference with us. Again, does it, when you see kind of the lines on the runway, you see the snow blowing, do you think weather played a major factor in this? One thing that I've noticed, too, is, the landing gear in the back is gone, right? The right wing is sheared off. The landing gear in the back is gone. The rudder, the horizontal stabilizer, all that stuff is gone. What do you think happened, just based on what you're seeing here on television?
Well, first of all, I listened to the air traffic control tape and the helicopter. So the winds, the runway is magnetic bearing of 230 degrees. The winds were a 30 to 40 degree right crosswind, 27 gusting to 34 knots. So it was a pretty steep right crosswind, 30 to 40 degrees off the nose. The aircraft came to rest at the intersection of runway 23, and I believe 15 left from the helicopter's description on the air traffic control tapes. The one thing people need to understand, I haven't flown the RJ, but all those who briefed me on flying the RJ, one of the issues they have with that aircraft in a crosswind landing situation is because it's so low to the ground that the pilots are taught to remove some of the crosswind correction right at touchdown so as to not drag a wing. My personal belief is, and keep in mind, in Canada, sometimes they don't plow the entire runway. They only plow the center section. So we don't know if that was a factor, but it is my belief that they kept their crosswind control in a little long, probably drug a wing, maybe hit a snowdrift. We're off center a little bit. Something caused that right wing down. The left wing was still flying. When it drug and ripped the right wing off, the left wing inverted the aircraft and they came to a sliding stop. That's my personal belief. The fact of that's only, how does an airplane get upside down on a runway?
Yeah, you're right.
I've asked.
You're right. It's a great
So,
question. The investigation continues. Sherry Walker, BJ Nouns, thank you both for your expertise tonight. Lonnie, over to you.
Thanks, Chris. You know, Toronto was experiencing extreme weather today with temperatures in the teens and that blustery snow that you saw. Meteorologist Dave Holder is with us now. Dave, there's a lot of harsh winter weather across the nation right now.
That's exactly right. Obviously, very cold temperatures. You saw the blowing snow out there. You were talking more about that crosswind and have some more information. We actually pulled up the exact conditions while that accident occurred, or just as that accident was occurred. 16 degrees. The important thing here, though, a westerly wind sustained at over 30 miles per hour. We did see a wind gust around that time of 40 miles per hour. In fact, the strongest wind gust reported all day was 41 miles per hour. So when the accident happened, it was just about the strongest wind gust we had seen at Pearson. Now, we had those steady winds, westerly winds here at over 30 miles per hour. Now, if we drill down a little bit into this here, we do have the plane now making its approach onto runway 23, which is basically going to the southwest. But you have those westerly winds coming across now at the surface. So what you're seeing then is a wind basically coming in from about a 45-degree angle. So your front right is where that wind is coming in from as you're landing to the southeast with that 40 mile per hour gust potentially there coming in due west. So that gives you a little bit of idea about what the pilots may have been feeling. Maybe a little bit of an extra lift there on that right wing as they were coming in from coming in the land. Of course, the temperature is very cold there as well. Obviously, you saw some of those pictures and those videos coming in. And of course, we've had obviously numerous ground delays too. And you heard from the conference there, a couple of those runways will remain shut.
You know, Dave, they said that they opened up some of those runways again, which means some planes are still landing. Based on what you're telling us right now about the wind gusts, et cetera, should some of these planes be concerned about the same conditions?
It's possible here. I know there's a certain threshold where if the wind's exceeding a certain amount there, they're not allowed to land. You're going to have to do a go-around. I've experienced myself, actually. A lot does depend on that wind direction, however. If you're, and you mentioned this here, you heard this, if you're flying directly into the wind, there's not going to be any wind shear. So judging based on what the latest winds are, the air traffic controllers will basically adjust the landing direction for some of these airplanes. It just happens to be that perhaps we got the strongest winds along with that roughly 45-degree angle with this particular airplane. Generally, though, these cases are and tend to be avoided.
All right, Dave Holder, thank you so much for that update. And we're continuing to follow this breaking news closely, but coming up, we take a look at this incident through the eyes of a former NTSB investigator. Stay with us.
When I think of pop, I think about pop soda.